Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
Now, here at the very top of the show, I was sitting at the kitchen table, enjoying a delicious food, and I was watching the 1987 Slammy Awards, which are like the Oscars, Grammys for the wrestling world. It is possibly the worst thing I've ever seen, and I've never enjoyed anything so much as that.
I mean, some things are so bad, they're wonderful.
Yep, so that it falls into that camp. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, Joy Cut starts pinging my phone. And I look at my phone. I paused the Slammies straight away when I saw it. And, you know, it's been weeks, I think, maybe since the Joy injury story. So these messages I received pertain to Joy's injury. So I'll let you explain, Joy.
So I was with Charlie and Finn, and we were walking, and I live, 5 minutes tops, Tim, to Radford University's campus. Mm-hmm. So we're walking my dog. We were like, let's go for a longer walk. Let's take him on campus. We literally got past the point where we crossed the road from our road to campus. I stepped off the sidewalk and to the parking lot on campus, and somebody's car had left an oil slick. Yes, you guys heard that right. As if my life didn't already feel like a sitcom or an episode of Scooby-Doo or the Looney Tunes, I fell on an oil slick. Both feet went out from underneath me. It was not a pretty fall. Tim has seen at least one picture of the injury. He hasn't seen the other injuries, but I'll let him explain to you what that looks like. I'm assuming he's going to say painful because it feels painful. And yeah, and of course, Charlie thought it was hilarious that I fell on an oil slick because it's like a video game. And to add insult to injury, in the next parking spot over, there was a banana peel on the ground.
This is like Wile E. Coyote. I mean, I'm expecting the next part of this story is that an anvil fell out of the sky.
I mean, it does feel that way. And then I couldn't even get up because my shoes were covered in oil.
Oh, no.
Charlie had to help me, basically help me off the ground to the grass where I could wipe my shoes off because I looked like a cartoon character slipping.
Oh, goodness
the
me.
oil on my shoe. It was ridiculous. And of course, if you've ever hit your knee, you know, when you get, because I have we call it like a raspberry. I don't know if that's a universal term, but it's like road rash or something when the skin's gone from your knee when you scrape it.
Yeah.
If you've ever had like a really bad strawberry, which I have one of those on my knee right now, you know, you do that, because it stings. I was doing that right when Charlie took a picture of the oil spill, and so I rocked it to the photo. And if that's not like a GIF for the internet, I don't know what is. Because I said to my friend Molly, and she's like, they say you can't hear a sound, but she knew exactly what I was doing when I was rocking. Everybody's done that because it's like that stinging.
But I think it's the banana peel. I mean, if slipping on oil is not bad enough, it's the banana peel as well. I mean, there is a place in Radford. I'm not even making this up. There is a place in Radford. The company is called Acme.
Yep, and it's a national company. I remember when I was a kid, Tim. There's an Acme store. So we have my parents' friends, Mitch and Barbara, lived on a military base because they're a military family. We were visiting them, and I've told you guys my family was the military too. Mm-hmm. And on right near this military base or wherever they lived at, they might have left off base at that time in Missouri. I remember as a little kid driving past the Acme store, and I thought that was the funniest thing ever. And now as an adult, I've learned it's like a national thing. But you know, of course, I instantly started thinking Roadrunner was in there buying his anvils or something.
Yeah, I've often wondered about Acme. I mean, what came first, the Acme company that there's a branch in Radford, or Acme, the Wile E. Coyote contraption company?
I don't know, but that's what it felt like I walked into that, or if you've ever played Mario Kart where they throw the banana peels and you're in a car. But it's like I got sabotaged. If I didn't slip on the oil, I was going to slip on the banana peel.
Goodness me.
And my glasses went flying. It was not a graceful, you know, like sometimes when you fall, it can be graceful. And then other times when you fall, it's not graceful at all, Tim.
Oh, I remember a few Christmases ago at Hannah's parents' house, they have a big long wheelchair ramp on the side of the house. Hannah's mother's a wheelchair user, so they have a wheelchair ramp.
Mhm.
And for some reason, it had got really wet and slimy and, like with moss on it, which you'd think it wouldn't because it's being used all the time, but that's beside the point. So Christmas Day comes. We get to Hannah's parents' house. I was giving Hannah's dad a guitar case for Christmas, and I was very pleased to give him this guitar case because it's one he wanted, and I'd looked it up and it had it delivered, and I had it in my hand. So I decided to walk up the wheelchair ramp, something I'd done many times. I walk up the wheelchair ramp, I slipped, and I fell on my side. Then somebody grabs the guitar case, and I'm just like flailing around. And I was wearing a brand new like white colored t-shirt. It was all ruined because it had all like green mess all over it, and
So embarrassing.
it was terrible. And then I had a bruise like I'd never seen on my arm.
Oh yeah. I mean, that one does take it, Tim. It's like it goes from one thing to the next to the next.
Oh, yes. But Joy, as I've said many times before, I would just want to put you in bubble wrap just all the time, just to be on the safe side.
This one, and sometimes, I mean, I twist and fall and do all kinds of stuff to myself all the time. But every once in a while, you'll get one that like really, really hurts, Tim. And I will say this knee one, because it's got that like where your knee bends at, or like where your knee ends and it kind of goes into your leg and you kind of move it. That's where the strawberry is. And so it stings every time that touches. And I don't know if you guys realize this, but you use your knees a lot to do anything.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
just in case you didn't know. But yeah, so I don't suggest it. And I really have to laugh because I wonder if there's like a video at Radford University of me falling now on one of their cameras.
Oh, you know that whole campus is covered in CCTV cameras.
Yeah. I'm wondering if I can sue the person whose car. I said, watch it be the person whose car was leaking oil was also the person who threw the banana peel out.
Well, of course, they pulled up with their leaky old car and then threw the peel out the window.
They're like, just to make sure, if the oil doesn't get you the banana peel. God. All right.
Dear. But there we are. So do you have, apart from your injury calamity, do you have anything else for us before we start the show?
So I have a bit of recent music news. It's happened this weekend, or this past week, and then it will lead into this episode. So this,
Okay.
I don't know how much Tim has seen, but Taylor Swift was recently won a bunch of awards at the Grammy. It was a really big Grammy night for her. And during this, there were some people who weren't too impressed with a couple of things she did. Celine Dion got to show up. And I don't know if you know, Celine Dion was recently diagnosed with stiff person syndrome. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard, causes you to have muscle spasms, and there's not a whole lot they can do about it. It can be very painful. Well, she was the one who gave Taylor the album of the year, artist of the year, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And Taylor didn't acknowledge her. And so a lot of people were upset about that. And then there was another thing Taylor Swift did. And this is the first time Celine had been seen in, quite a while. So it was a big deal. And they brought it up. And she just kind of like takes the Grammy away from her and doesn't acknowledge Celine. But then later there was pictures of them together. I don't know. People thought she kind of shunned her because she was like saying thank you and so excited to everybody else on stage. But she didn't acknowledge Celine Dion. So the other thing is later when she won some other thing related to her album, she announced during her speech that she's getting ready to release a new album called The Tortured Poets Department. That's the new album that's coming out. She announced it. Some people thought it was kind of weird and almost in bad taste after it's like your fourth or fifth year of winning, to go up there and say, and now you guys aren't going to win next year because I'm releasing another album. That's kind of how some people took it. And then there was a lot of people saying, like, you don't hear actors taking their Oscar and then telling you about the next movie they're making. They just thought it was strange. I'm curious to know what you think of that, Tim. Is that strange to you, or is it bad taste?
I mean, the thing about Celine Dion just sounds like a misunderstanding of everybody that's looking at it. They were probably talking backstage or something prior to this. So, I mean, that is just people reading things into the thing they want to read into.
And stiff people syndrome has a lot of triggers, Tim. And so I wonder if she was directed not to engage with her. Like where Celine has stiff people syndrome, there's different triggers. So I was wondering if they maybe told her not to engage with Celine too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because it
maybe.
can cause her.
Yeah, maybe not hug, because I mean, she probably wanted to hug her or shake her hand or all that kind of stuff. And then maybe, like you say, maybe that's something that you don't do, especially as she suffers from this condition and you don't know what state she's in and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So that's one thing. I think the other thing about announcing your album. Now, what is the Grammys for, really? It's a promotional exercise.
That's true.
That is what it's for. People, I mean, yeah, you do it for like the fact that you're getting an award, but why are you getting an award? You're getting it because it's a promotional activity. It means your face is going to be out there, and then when you go on tour, you can say 3 times Grammy award-winning singer so and so, so and so. It is really just, it's promotion. And for somebody who is as popular as Taylor Swift is at the moment, I mean, why would you not say that? And then the other thing is, what do you say if you've got all these Grammy awards and you're up for the 58th time? You thanked your manager and you thanked your agent and you thanked your parents and all this kind of stuff. It's like, what's the next thing you're going to say?
I kind of I don't really think that it's in bad taste. I kind of see where they're coming from. Maybe it does kind of distract. I don't know. But I don't think it's in bad taste. But a lot of people were impressed with it. And she said, I read an article from her. She said, I had this plan in my head. I told my friends, told my boyfriend, told my cat Jack, that once if I was lucky enough to win, I'm going to do it. I'm going to announce my new album. And so she said she's had this plan for a while. And then if she didn't win, she was going to do it at her Tokyo concert era thing that she's doing. So I mean, I don't really find it that way, but I also think that she's having her problems with, when artists become really, really big, sometimes people will find a problem in everything they do.
That's true, because I was going to say, if it was, I can't even think of an artist to describe this, but if it was somebody, I don't know, here's this for something. Wolfgang Van Halen with Mammoth WVH. There you go. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't believe he was nominated for any Grammys, but let's say he was, and it was like a rock album of the year or something. Yeah. If Wolfgang Van Halen went on stage and thanked everybody and said, oh, ladies and gentlemen, and just to say, we have got a new album coming out next year, everyone's going to go, woo! And no one would even mention it ever again.
Yes, but because it's Taylor Swift, now all eyes are on her 24/7.
Yeah, there was a whole thing on Threads this week about people complaining about the fact she's using a private jet and shouldn't she be more environmentally aware and stuff like that. And people said, well, okay, well, that's one way of looking at it. But the other thing, she's such a celebrity at this point. You imagine her flying on commercial airplanes.
Well, I think one of the big ones was she recently had her private jet fly something that was only a 32-minute drive that people were upset about. But to be fair, I've been upset at most celebrities for doing that because it is very wasteful to me. But on the flip side, there's just so many more people talking about it when every celebrity under the sun does it, Tip. But now because it's Taylor Swift, it's a problem because she's so popular. Yeah,
the other thing you have to look at is that was it the 32-minute flight just because, or was it because the aircraft had to be in that position ready for something later on to take us somewhere else? I mean, you don't know the full logistics of that.
It's true. And I mean, that I was just kind of like, I find it silly that we're making a big deal about this, but, plenty of people, I'm sure the Kardashians do it every 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then the other thing, of course, is that if you could travel by private jet anywhere, you probably would anyway.
A lot less traffic.
Exactly.
Anyway, all right. So the reason I wanted to bring that up at the beginning of the episode is to get into our topic. We are going to discuss, we're not going to discuss specific songs like we do a lot. Mm-hmm. This is the top, and I kind of went through a couple of different articles to comprise this, but this is the top 20 most important moments in music history. So different concerts, shows, songs released, and just what made them so iconic in that moment.
Okay.
And so the first one we're going to talk about, and that's why I was bringing it up, because Taylor's kind of having some of those moments herself. Like everything she does now is under the eye, and if she does one thing, it could be like a historical moment. So that's why I led into it.
No, I understand.
But who knows? I mean, next week it'll be that I don't know. actually, she took a school bus, or no, she took a bus, Tim, and took some other passenger seats, which she could have been taking the plane. Who knows with the way it goes. Anyway, so the first one is something I think Tim is going to be very familiar with. This is the Freddie Mercury Tribute Concert for AIDS Awareness.
Yes, I believe it was Easter 92 or 91?
91.
91. There we go. Yeah.
Yes. So what this is, obviously, if you're not familiar with Freddie Mercury, he passed away of AIDS. And this was paying tribute to Mercury as well as raising awareness for AIDS. The concert featured a number of the world's biggest bands at the time and had an attendance of over 70,000, with tickets selling out in just 3 hours. The event was also broadcast live with over 500 million people watching, and footage from the concert is very classic, and it's just really sweet to watch. And obviously, a lot of people who had a personal relationship with him showed up for this.
Yeah, so I remember watching it. I said it was Easter 1991, as you said. It was on TV. I lived 14 miles from Wembley Stadium. And did I go? No. Did I try and get tickets? No. That's beside the point. But I watched the whole thing from beginning to end. I was living in Twickenham at the time. I sat in my bedroom all afternoon and early evening watching it. And it was absolutely fantastic. And there was a lot of highlights in it. There was Axl Rose and Elton John doing Bohemian Rhapsody. Seal was really big at the time. And he sung Who Wants to Live Forever, and that was really good. Robert Plant did Innuendo, and it was terrible, and to the point where all of the official releases have that edited out.
Yeah. Didn't he do a few songs? Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did Tie Your Mother Down as well. Also, no, he did Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Sorry. Tie Your Mother Down was Joe Elliott and Slash.
Yes. So I actually have the track list here. I'll just run through it really quick. So there's the performances without Queen and then performances with the members of Queen, which I think Tim was mostly naming the ones with Queen.
Yeah.
So Metallica did Inner Sandman, Sad But True, and Nothing Else Matters. Extreme, which Tim just saw, did a Queen medley. Bohemian Rhapsody, Keep Yourself Alive, I Want to Break Free, so on and so forth. Def Leppard, Animal, Let's Get Rocked, and Now I'm Here with Brian May.
Yep.
Very important note there. I don't know who this is. Bob Geldof?
Bob Geldof, the guy who masterminded the whole Band-Aid and Live Aid.
Oh, that's who that guy is. Okay, that makes sense. I didn't know him by name. Okay. Well, he did Too Late God, Spinal Tap. I thought it was interesting. Spinal Tap of all bands was there. I don't know why. The Majesty of Rock, U2, Guns N' Roses, Mango Groove, Elizabeth Taylor, Freddie Mercury. And then, not Freddie Mercury as in the person who passed. Sorry, guys. That was not what I meant to say. Queen, and then Joe Elliott and Slash did Tie Your Mother Down. Queen, Roger Daltrey, and Tommy Lee did Heaven and Hell. Pinball Wizard. This is a really long concert, Tim. I want it all.
It ran all afternoon and all evening. It's hours, the live.
Oh, I'm just going to say the names because if I keep saying them, we'll be here all week. Gay Sharon, James Hetfield, Robert Plant, as Tim said, Paul Young, Seal, Lisa Stansfield, David Bowie, Ian Hunter, David Bowie, Mick Ronson, Joe Elliott, Phil Collins all did a song together. David Bowie and Mick Ronson, David Bowie again, George Michael did a few songs, Elton John and Axl Rose, which is kind of a weird combination, by the way.
Yeah, at the time it was like, oh, really?
Elton John and Tommy Lee, and then Axl Rose again, Liza Minnelli, and then Queen by themselves did God Save the Queen.
Yeah, so Liza Minnelli did...
We Are the Champions.
Yeah, it was fantastic because I didn't really know about Liza Minnelli at the time too much. But what I found out later is that Freddie Mercury used to idolize her. And the fact that she came out to sing We Are the Champions with Freddie Mercury's band was just like mind-blowing.
Oh, I love that. And this was in a very heightened time. If you guys have ever seen the concert poster, it's like the blue one you see all the time with the red kind of Queen logo, and then Freddie Mercury's wearing the yellow jacket with his fist up. Mm-hmm. It's pretty iconic. I think most people have seen that. And you can find all the footage online. I clicked through a few different videos on YouTube before I came on, but I don't know that I've ever sat down and watched the whole concert because it's quite long.
Yeah, the official release isn't the same as it was broadcast. The broadcasts had a lot more of the people before the bit with Queen playing at the end. I should also say that George Michael's Somebody to Love is probably the most iconic performance from that particular concert.
Absolutely. And I think we've talked about it before. He sounds amazing when he sings Somebody to Love, which is not an easy song to sing.
No, absolutely not.
given a lot of Queen songs are not easy. They have this thing where I think Someone to Love, Hammer to Fall, um, even Fat Bottom Girls. Like when I've tried to sing karaoke versions, or just like try to actually sing them, the timing is interesting. It doesn't, in my brain, the pattern of the rhythm of the music and the timing of the vocals don't always match up the way I feel like they should. And Tim may know that there's like some, it might just be because it's Freddie Mercury singing, and he's just fantastic. But there's just like, it's a really hard timing. They're not easy songs to sing for whatever reason.
No, and then the other thing is they're all geniuses, so of course they're going to be writing music like that.
You make a good point. And they have some of the most complicated lyrics for you to remember.
Exactly.
I was like, there's probably some science behind it, but also it is Freddie Mercury and Queen. So
there we are.
All right. So the next one, speaking of this person, I think we brought this person up just a second ago. Number 19 is Elton John's doubleheader at Dodger Stadium.
Yes, famously, this is where he comes on wearing the sparkly Dodgers baseball outfit.
Yes, and he has a literal baseball hat in his hand. He stands up on the piano and all that good stuff. So on October 25th and 26th in 1975, Elton John played 2 sold-out shows at Dodger Stadium in LA, being the first musical act to perform there since the Beatles 9 years earlier, which I didn't know that part of it, so that was cool. Well, those are obviously some big shoes to fill. The concert combined was attended by over 100,000 fans, and at the time was the 2 largest single artist concerts ever held. I don't know why that was a tongue twister. 2 largest single artist concert ever held. It was widely known at the time, but it wasn't wildly known at the time, but Elton John had tried to commit suicide 2 days earlier, and was in a really bad place. And so that's why I think most people find this to be an iconic moment for him. It was like a change in who he was and leading him into a better life.
Yeah, I mean that's covered in the Elton John Rocket Man film, that very dark time in his life. So yeah. I'm glad that he came through that the other side, and he was able to do this performance, if nothing else, because I mean maybe he needed that. Maybe he needed that to sort of drive him to carry on. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that he had lived such a life of everybody kind of looking at him that he needed. He needs that. I think it's what gives him the energy. You know what I mean, Tim? In some way. And if you watch him, he's got a spark in him. And that concert is supposed to be like over 31 songs live. And just recently on the concert tour that I went to see him on last year, the very last one he did, the Yellow Brick Road tour, the last show he did in America that he said was going to be ever was at Dodger Stadium. That's where he ended.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I will say his concert. I mean, I know you've been to Elton John's concert. It was a very long concert, Tim. I guess he's notorious for that, but it was a long concert.
Yeah, it was over 3 hours when I saw him in the 90s, Wembley Stadium.
Now, I will say we were just talking about, since we brought up the Taylor Swift thing, and I know Tim has seen she's dating a football player. Doing one of those sports balls.
Yeah. Now, that is the one with the ball, not the one where they drive in a circle. I do know that.
Yes. So apparently recently, some local person, we won't say, I don't know what their names are, thought it was a great idea to drive their drone directly over that giant sports ball thing that Taylor Swift's boyfriend and Taylor Swift was in. And of course, the government didn't like it because they thought it was something bad. And followed this guy back. And the reason I thought about that was because when I went to the Elton John concert that was in the arena, they had like literal security in the sky. In the sky. And so that's pretty much what happened was they were worried that, this drone was something bad, and they stopped the football game. Mind you, for those of us who are in America, I mean, American football, we're getting ready to have that Super Bowl thing we have every year. So it's like one of the bigger games. So there was a lot of people in attendance. And this guy could go to jail for 6 years for flying his drone somewhere he wasn't supposed to above the football stadium.
There we go. Because, I mean, who knows? It might have a weapon on it. You don't know what's going on.
Well, and I mean, it can't be too sure nowadays, especially after the thing that happened in Vegas. I'm not going to get into it. But after that really bad event at a concert, I imagine they take it even more seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, security around the Super Bowl as well is just like unbelievable.
I don't know if you remember this, but a few years back, whenever Beyonce was getting ready to come on, or her tour, or her halftime show was ending, the lights went out in the stadium. like all the lights went out, the power went out completely. It was kind of weird to watch on TV because you could see everybody just standing there like, and then they just flickered back on. But there was a little bit of panic that something bad was about to happen.
Weird.
And I don't remember what it was. It turned out to be like something very, electronic, like overload or something, but interesting. All right. So, and we'll go to the next one. So the next one is something that I've seen many times, and we haven't really talked about this one, Tim, but they say it was iconic, and I think it was. And if you look at the way this kind of opened the door up for pop music, you'll get it. It is Madonna's version of Like a Virgin at the VMAs.
I think I remember this. I think I remember seeing. Is this the one where she's on a bed and she's like writhing around and being inappropriate on TV?
She's on a giant cake and comes out in like a wedding dress, and then at one point she's on the ground rolling around.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes. Now, I remembered it of her being on a giant bed, but yes, you are right. What year was this?
This was in 1984. And so it was before, kind of what you see on the VMAs nowadays. Let's just say that. And they're talking about whether you agree with it or not. So basically what happened was she descended from a giant cake dressed in that famous wedding gown that was very, torn up. She performed Like a Virgin, which is obviously a very a song with a lot of innuendo as it is. It was kind of controversial to begin with. And then as Tim says, she decides it's a good idea to roll around on the floor. And yeah, they say the rest is history. And there was a lot of outrage after it.
Yeah, especially in super conservative 1984 US TV, etc. The interesting thing about Like a Virgin, she did not write that song. It was two gentlemen that wrote that song. There was a songwriting team.
Exactly. And I've heard that before many times before, but the irony is that like that nowadays wouldn't even nobody would bat an eye, Tim, if that happened on stage. That's lighthearted compared to what happens with the VMAs now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even by US TV standards, what they get away with now is like so far over above what would happen in 1980s US TV.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, I guess in some way it was a performance that let women do it. It was very empowering for some women to be able to do things like that. Because the thing about it is there was a little bit of a stereotype. I'm sure men were allowed to do a little bit more at this time than women. And so what they're talking about is this was a moment for a woman to kind of stand up for herself, to do what she wants, and kind of just throw her cares to the wind, I guess. And the irony is that all these conservative news, like Fox News and all this stuff, Tim, apparently were all over there saying her career was never going to take off. And they were very wrong.
Well, do you know what's funny about Madonna? I was thinking about her the other day. So there is a really good documentary on Netflix, and it's about We Are the World.
Yeah.
And there is an 80s era documentary about We Are the World that's up on YouTube, which does actually fill in some of the stuff that
That's the one I watched.
Yeah, the new Netflix one is good, and it has contemporary interviews with people, but it misses out on some of the things that they cover on the 80s documentary. But the funny thing is, they're talking about Cyndi Lauper being on there. She features very prominently on We Are the World, but Madonna doesn't feature on it. And I had a conversation with Hannah and Hannah said, shouldn't Madonna have been on that? And I said, well, you have to look back at that particular point in time. I think, in whatever it's 82, 83 or whenever that We Are the World came out, I think Cyndi Lauper was actually a bigger star at the time.
Yes, because if you think about this was Like a Virgin is one of the very first songs most people know from Madonna, right? And that was 1984. I mean, she probably if she had an album out, it was like one album when We Are the World was a thing.
Yeah, because she had that first Madonna album. It has Borderline and Lucky Star and all that kind of stuff.
And that's when she was more, just kind of more pop music-y until she went into her second album when you get like a Prayer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's True Blue you had before that. But yeah, the megastar of Madonna didn't start till much later on.
And that she I feel like she's one of those people that shot to fame really quickly, had a lot of hits right in the 80s, and then she proceeded to have a few hits in the 90s. Then she goes back down, and then she has another hit in the early 2000s. That Time Goes By is always in my head. That song she did in the early 2000s. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tim?
Yeah. I forget what it's called. It has a sample of an ABBA song in it.
Time goes.
I think it's Not Enough or Strong Enough or something like that.
I gotta look it up.
It's the one with the ABBA sample. And it was actually approved by Benny and Bjorn. They don't normally allow their music to be
Hung Up
sampled.
is the name of the song.
Oh,
Every
Hung Up. There you go.
thing that you say. That one.
Yeah.
That song was all over the place. It was the Confessions of a Dance Floor album. And it's just like, it's so interesting. She had a bunch of like a collection of hits right at the beginning of the 80s. Then towards the early 90s, she had a collection of hits. And then towards the early 2000s, she did. She just like pops right back up every 10 years.
There we are. And now what does she do? She performs to a backing track and keeps people waiting for 4 hours for their concert.
And gets sued along the way. I would be so mad if I sat in an audience for 4 hours for a concert, Tim.
It's just rude. I'm sorry. It's not diva-ish behavior. It's rude. You're
It's
not
plain
respecting regular working people who've paid through the nose for tickets to see you because, and if it wasn't for the people who are waiting for you, you wouldn't have a career.
And like you made the point of like the fact that all of her people who work for that stage show, they might have been working since 8 a.m. and are ready to go home.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the audience, you have to think of the crew. Every part of that operation is set up where you start at a certain time, you finish at a certain time, you break down at a certain time, and it's just disrespectful. I would not want to engage in a Madonna concert with that kind of shenanigans going on.
Wouldn't be worth it. I'll just put her on the YouTubes and the hit clips.
There we are.
All right. So so we're going to go on to the next one. And this is something we've talked a little bit about, I think, in one episode where I discussed like a lot of crazy stuff that happened at concerts. And this is the Altamont Speedway Festival. So for those who aren't familiar, the Rolling Stones concert at Altamont Speedway in 1969 is infamous for bringing a somber end to the Summer of Love. It was kind of like intended to be like a sequel to Woodstock. It had a feature of a number of popular bands. It was attended by 300,000 fans, as well as the Hells Angels, who were unofficially hired to provide security. The event became increasingly violent throughout the day, and the Stones took the stage. Things came to a head as one concert goers whipped out a gun and then was stabbed by one of the Hells Angels. Before the night was over, there would be 2 more deaths. Rolling Stone magazine said it was rock and roll's all-time worst day.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I'm not going to go into the world of the Hells Angels, but were they necessarily the best people to do security at a large event with 300,000 people? Probably not. But it's tragic that people lost their lives when they went to a concert. They just wanted to go and have a good time, and then it just turned into a big thing. But this has gone down in history as a very dark time in the world of rock and roll.
Well, and then ironically, there's a quote from Keith Richards where he goes, basically, I think everything was well handled, but lots of people were tired, and I think a few tempers got frayed. But overall, a good concert. Are you serious?
Yeah, but that's the words of a heroin addict.
Yeah, especially at this time in life. You're right on that one, Tim.
Yeah, he's the legendary Keith Richards and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, at that point, he was a heroin addict. So I wouldn't take those. Quotes particularly literally.
You make a valid point on that, and also he now looks like the Crypt Keeper, so he's never gonna die.
But he can never die. You know that he's immortal. Yeah. I always thought Lemmy was immortal, but no, Keith Richards actually is immortal.
It absolutely is true. And every time I see him, I think, yep, he's just never going to die. I don't even know. Like, it's like he gets older. He looks older. Like, he looks significantly older every year, but it's like something about him is still alive in there.
Yeah, and they're still touring. They're going to be touring, I think, this year, the Rolling Stones, I think. It's ridiculous.
And I can't even walk in a parking lot without slipping on an oil spill. Anyway. So yes, and obviously, I think that the sad part about it was the fact that this was kind of being, and if you see the promotional material and the marketing, they really were trying to say it was going to be another Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's not exactly how that should have went. Anyway, so this one's a good-hearted one and one of my favorites that I've watched many times. This is the Jackson 5's debut on American Bandstand.
Yes, I've seen this because when I was last at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they have an American Bandstand theater that you go into, and they show clips of American Bandstand. And they actually showed that clip of the Jackson 5 on American Bandstand.
And it's so good. So they decided this is the first time I think that they kind of debuted ABC, the song.
Hmm.
And this is Dick Clark's American Bandstand on February 21st, 1970. Of course, the Jackson Five is comprised of Jackie, Jermaine, Tito, Marlon, and Michael. And of course, Michael stole the show, but they had their little. This was the first time I think America really saw like the hardcore choreography and just the youthfulness of them.
Hmm.
And of course, this was the first time you saw Michael Jackson stand out. And at this point, you could tell that he was a star.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, their dad, Joseph Jackson Sr., put the band
Yeah.
together. They're all supposed to be equals, but I mean, Michael was always the star from day one.
There is something to be said about the it factor, whether people want to admit it or not. Not always the best musician is the one that becomes famous. I'm not saying Michael Jackson wasn't a wonderful musician. I'm just saying though, like when these people win these shows and they become famous, or we talk about pop artists, Tim, who maybe don't have the greatest singing voice, but they have a decent singing voice. They can carry a tune and they have that it factor. That's what sells. And that's the truth of the matter. Whether you agree with it or not, that's just how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what's funny? I was actually listening to Michael Jackson today, but I was listening to an unusual Michael Jackson track. So there's an expanded release of Thriller on the Spotify. And you probably know this as a music aficionado, but the original title for Thriller was Starlight.
Yes,
And
because
have
of
you,
the movie theater.
yeah, and have you heard the song Starlight?
I have.
And he goes, "It's a starlight,
Starlight.
starlight sun," and it's weird to hear Thriller with lyrics that you don't think should be there, and you can see why they went with Thriller and not Starlight.
Yeah, Starlight's way too lighthearted. It doesn't quite fit it's not got the right amount of consonants or not consonants. What are they called, Tim? It has the wrong amount of like in words, the different pieces.
Syllables.
Yes. He let me dig my hole till he finally answered the question. Like not consonants for vowels.
Syllables, Joy. It's syllables.
That one. That's the one I was trying to say, everybody. It doesn't have the right amount of syllables to work in that song. Anyway, so, and if you've never seen it, go watch it. Dick Clark is always kind of awkward to me, though. I will say, as a host, I've never. When you watch him on Bandstand, he's kind of. I don't know. There's just something very awkward. I know he's famous. He's done a lot for music. He hosted everything under the sun and produced everything. But for some reason, in his early host days, I always find him awkward.
He's like Jimmy Fallon. I always find Jimmy Fallon incredibly awkward and not a good interviewer.
I hate about Jimmy Fallon is okay. So I hate this concept, and I get it. Jimmy Fallon thinks he's a good singer. Jimmy Fallon thinks he's a good singer, and he is a good singer on about 3 songs. And
Yes.
every time they make him sing, he always sings like Beast of Burden. Like that's one of his go-to songs, or Michael McDonald, or something that has some kind of humor to it almost.
Hmm.
And it like they just like they keep trying to force feed to us that he's a musician, and I'm like,
Well, he released that album, The Bathroom Wall, that Hannah really loves, where it says that whole thing about trolls and I'm your idiot boyfriend. Have you ever heard that?
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, look up Jimmy Fallon's album, The Bathroom Wall. Idiot Boyfriend is actually a really good song.
Okay. But is he a good singer or is it a good song?
No, it's a good comedy album, is what it is, and he's an okay singer. He's a much better singer than I am, but
That's what I said.
he's not Aretha Franklin. Let's put it that way.
Yes, that's what I'm getting. I don't want everybody to think I think he's a bad singer. It's not that, but it's not like he's a grandiose, amazing singer. But it's like they try to force feed you on his show that he is.
That's true, but also he is the host of the Tonight Show, and he can decide when he wants to perform on it. So,
I mean, you make a valid point. Now, the one that I hate to say this actually is a wonderful singer, even though he's a terrible person. When you is what's his face? The one with the C. The one for Britain, Tim. James Corden.
James Corden is actually a really, really good singer.
He is.
There was a bit where he was performing Queen songs when he had a late night show. And I remember saying to Hannah, I said, they should have him fronting Queen, not Adam Lambert, because he is a really good singer. He's a
amazing.
terrible person, but he's a really good singer.
Which he knows though, because that's why he does carpool karaoke and all that stuff. And he sings constantly on his show. But to his credit, he's very good. There's this one scene he did with Ariana Grande. Whether you like her or not, she has a phenomenal, like, voice to him. Like she could do Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, anybody. And they do like this Broadway medley together that is so good. Like I watched it probably 1,000 times. I was mesmerized by how good it was. And
Yeah.
because I've said it many times, for good or for bad, people with British or English accents, I guess I should say, have a natural falsetto kind of high part to their voice, and it makes them sound very proper, which it helps with your vowel sounds when you're singing. So there is some advantage to the way people in England talk when it comes to singing.
Let me try this.
Nailed it, Tim. I don't know what note you were going for, but nailed it.
It was a high C, probably.
Don't let Mr. Bacon watch this one, Tim. Inside joke for those who know. Anyway, all right. So we're going to move along. Move it on up. Anyway, so the next song is something I thought was interesting, but it came up on 3 or 4 of these lists, so I wouldn't have really thought about it. And I'm going to tell you guys the truth, and please don't come for me, internet. I actually don't really care for this song, but they said it was iconic, and I see why, and it is Ebony and Ivory by McCartney and Stevie Wonder.
And that sort of classed as a top moment in music history, is it? The fact that them two artists got together.
Yes.
Well,
that's what they said. And I don't know. I'm kind of like, meh.
I think it's a moment in music history. I think it, like I said, it's pretty iconic. I think I like the song. The version that they play at the White House for the Obama thing a number of years ago is actually really good.
All right, I need to go back and listen to that one because I don't know. I mean, it's an okay song. Obviously, I think it's cool that Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney did a song together. They say, because they're musical partners and, the Beatles, one of the greatest pop rock, whatever you want to call them, groups, and Stevie Wonder's an R&B artist and all these things. But I don't know, just that they could come together at this time and put a song together that was a very powerful statement. But to me, I don't know that I thought it was one of the biggest moments in music history.
No, I mean, maybe in the context of the timeline of when it happened, maybe it was big. But you say you look back on it now, and there's so many collaborations with different artists. It's nothing unusual now. But maybe at the time it was, and maybe that's why it was seen as such a big moment in music history.
Yeah, I mean, that could be it. But this next one seems more, huge. And this one is, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this artist, but mostly about conspiracy theories. This is Bob Marley performing 2 days after being shot.
Yes. He was shot. Wasn't he shot on stage? Or am I remembering that wrong?
Okay, so basically what happened was he wasn't shot on stage. Marley, his wife Rita Marley, and his manager and Don Taylor and band employee Louis Griffin were shot by 7 gunmen. Marley, they all walked away with their lives. Marley was left with a bullet lodged in his arm. Rita was grazed in her head with a bullet, and Taylor was shot 5 different times and managed to live the tale. I don't know what these people were, and the irony was, Tim, and I hate to say this, was they were rehearsing the song "I Shot the Sheriff."
Oh goodness me, that's terrible.
And basically, Bob had stepped out because the horns weren't on the record, and the horn players wanted to play on. He came out of the rehearsal room and then went to the kitchen to get a grapefruit or something, and then it suddenly came through the door, and someone started firing.
Yeah, I mean, they were all lucky to sort of leave that scene with their lives. But I mean, that's terrible. They just practice. They're in band practice. I do that every week, trying to corral 5 different people together and play the same song 20 times to nail the ending. I mean, that's just a terrible scene.
Well, and the thing about it is the very innocence of he went to go get a grapefruit from the kitchen after they finished recording.
He just wanted to get a delicious and healthy snack.
And then, so for those who don't know, because of his outspokenness, he found himself in the middle of a battle between the Democratic Socialist People Party and the Conservative Jamaican Labor Party. He sided with the Democratic Socialist Party, and his affiliations are the reason he almost lost his life. Marley was tapped by the Prime Minister, Michael Manley, to perform at a free concert dubbed the Smile Jamaica concert on December 5th of that year. Ironically, the concert was organized in an effort to defuse political tensions. Despite those intentions, that's how he ended up as a shooting victim in his own house.
Yeah, I hate that. That's just terrible.
But what is kind of, I hate to say, the silver lining was even after all this happened, Marley was able to go 2 days after to a concert that had been scheduled to play. He decided to play to 80,000 people, and they said he refused to be intimidated or scared and performed a 90-minute set.
Well, there we are. Go Bob.
And that's why this is iconic. That's why I find this a little bit more iconic than Ebony and Ivory. Sorry if you guys love that song. Now, this is a new one that I did not know. I'm going to be curious if Tin has heard this, but when I read it, I'm like, how have I missed this story my entire life? And this is the time in 1967 in America when The Who played on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour.
Yes, I know exactly about this. So they decided at this particular concert to close their set by putting explosives in their equipment. And Pete Townsend, no, sorry, I'll start again. Keith Moon had spoken to the stagehands, and there was only supposed to be a certain amount of explosive in his bass drums. But he spoke to the stagehand and got the stagehand to put 10 times the amount of explosive in the bass drums. So they finish the set and all things are flying around and the bass drums explode. Now, Pete Townsend's head was right where that bass drum was when it exploded. And he said that his hearing loss and tinnitus and all that stems from this particular incident.
So they said basically it was the song, they were literally playing their smash hit, literally, My Generation, to end the show, like Tim was saying. And all it looked like next thing everybody watching knew was there was smoke rising from amplifiers, smashed instruments, and a bass drum exploding.
Yeah.
That went off 3 times. And then went off 3 times more firepower than was originally intended. That was hard for me to say. So I had 3 times the amount of firepower that was originally intended. And this was The Who's first real concert in America.
Yeah, I don't think they actually played live. I think it was playback.
Okay. Well, like I said, this is the first I've heard of it, but I don't know much about the show.
Yeah, it was a thing at the beginning of that Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, but it said, yeah, it's what Pete Townsend says ruined his hearing for the rest of his life, basically.
Have you watched it? Like when it happens?
It's iconic. I've seen it 20 times.
Where have I been? I've never heard of it. I've never even heard of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. It's an American comedy and variety TV series hosted by the Smothers Brothers. Well, I could have guessed that. Initially airing on CBS from 1967 to 1969. They had a lot of acts that liked political satire, and it included Buffalo Springfield, Cream, and The Who.
Yep.
There you go, guys. I've never seen this, but now I've got to go give it a Google later. Anyway, so this one I thought was super interesting, and this is a band that I will say, me and Tim have had our kind of back and forth about how we feel about this band, but this pointed out something that I had never paid attention to until I read this. It's about Nirvana's Unplugged, MTV Unplugged concert, which for those who don't know, this was 2 months before, and I think they recorded it 2 months before, and then it was the last televised performance of Kurt Cobain before his death in April.
Yeah. So, as I've said many times, I never really got Nirvana. I remember, as I said, when Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, and we had MTV before anyone else did. And I remember recording Smells Like Teen Spirit off TV and playing it to my friends in the music room. And I said, look, this is new and it's on MTV and it's great and people love it. And they were like, meh, that's all right. And then, of course, like 6 months later, Nirvana were the best thing ever and everyone's going, oh, Nirvana, they're so fantastic. But I don't know. It was a genre and kind of music that completely passed me by. I know people love it, and that's fine. If you love it, it's great, but it's not. It doesn't really stand the test of time for me. And I've seen this Unplugged performance, and it's that Man Who Sold the World song that seems to get all the attention. And they do Polly and all the other songs in their Unplugged style. But again, I don't get Kurt Cobain. It's just.
I'm at a loss to because it's definitely not one of my favorite bands. I respect them for their time, and I understand they're very iconic and important to a lot of other people. But for me, I've never been a big Nirvana fan. But what people were saying, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. It wasn't 2 months. It's 7 months before they recorded it. I thought it was two in my brain for some reason, but I just want to clarify 7 months. And so, with that being said, it was part of cable TV, of course, MTV's Unplugged. And they said that they did songs by, and I went back and watched it, and Tim's right, they did songs by the Vaselines, David Bowie, Meat Puppets, I think was another artist, and they did everything acoustically.
Mm-hmm.
Though it does say they used some amplification and guitar effects during the set. So
Yeah, Kurt Cobain played a left-handed Martin guitar with a built-in pickup. So, like when he did "Man Who Sold the World," he plays that bam, 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 and it's played on a effectively electric guitar. But I don't know. There was something about Nirvana that never sat with me right because I thought the songs were very simplistic, and Kurt Cobain wasn't a terribly good guitar player or singer. And I mean, for some people, that is the appeal, and it inspired so many other great bands. But I don't know. For me, being a fan of Van Halen and other such kind of rock bands, I saw this and I was like, no, I don't like this.
well, the reason that I think some of the reason why this one is so iconic, though, is the eeriness of it. So apparently, they taped their performance at Sony Studios in New York, and Cobain suggested the stage be decorated with a stargazer, lilies, black candles, and a crystal chandelier. And of course, the Coletta, the person over the staging, asked, "You mean like a funeral?" And Cobain said, "Exactly like a funeral." So I think that people find it eerie. And if you go back and look at the staging, it does look like a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Which was very creepy. And then you add the acoustic side of it, and then the fact that he passed away so much, of a very untimely death. I think that's why it stands that people like to watch it.
Yeah, but I mean, one thing, we wouldn't have Dave Grohl without Nirvana. Or maybe
That is true.
maybe we would have Dave Grohl without Nirvana. I don't know. Dave Grohl is such a talent. I think he would have probably latched onto something.
I mean, you could be right, but it is always so interesting to me, Tim, because for some reason in my life and what I've always seen Dave Grohl is the Foo Fighters. That's all I see when I see Dave Grohl. And so then when I see a picture of Nirvana and then it's like, oh, Dave Grohl on the drums, I'm like, oh yeah, he was the drummer of Nirvana. Like, I don't know why, but that's so important to his history, of course. But like, I always think of the Foo Fighters. I don't think about Nirvana.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a Foo Fighter so long now. I mean, Nirvana, in the terms of his career, it was like a very small thing at the very beginning of his career.
It was, I mean, yes, it was probably the most influential times of his life and where he got, some of his drumming chops, but couldn't think of a more opposite band. The Foo Fighters and Nirvana are very on the opposite ends of the rock spectrum, too. And I seem to see him more in that Foo Fighters almost like fun world. Like a lot of the music for the Foo Fighters could be fun, whereas you've got like this kind of grunge with Nirvana. I don't know. That's what I associate Dave Grohl with.
Yeah, and when you look at Nirvana, who would have thought the best singer, the best songwriter, and the best guitar player was sitting behind the drums?
People need to look at the drummers more, Tim. I'll stop all those stereotypes, everybody. That is ironic, though, now that you said that.
Yeah.
Say what you want, but my dad still swears he liked Ringo Starr's solo music better than the Beatles.
Some of that's good. I like Ringo Starr's solo music. I mean, he's not a great singer, but he's Ringo, for goodness sake.
Anyway, all right. So my dad doesn't say that ironically either, guys.
Well, Joy's dad, Jim Morrison Sr., if you like Ringo Starr's solo music, you enjoy it, sir.
Exactly. All right. Hold on one second. Oh, that's what's said. So this is the time Johnny Cash played at California's San Quentin prison.
Yes.
So basically, for those who don't know, he always played the Man in Black. You would think that he had like a lot more run-ins with the law than I think he actually did.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of his outlaw spirit, he tended to sympathize with prison inmates and things of that nature. He did advocate for prison reform, as well as in the late 50s, he started to visit and perform in prisons. The real moment came on February 24th, 1969, when Cash performed live at California's San Quentin prison, fueled in part by his annoyance with the British film crew filming the concert. Cash led a rowdy crowd of inmates with a rebellious spirit to make that famous scene we all see.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I found out recently it was UK Granada TV who were making a documentary. And they're
Yeah.
making a documentary about Johnny Cash, and they were just following him around from gig to gig. And it's because of that we have this famous recording. And there is a bit in that particular performance, and in fact, it's replicated on so many T-shirts and posters now, where Johnny Cash is giving the finger. And
Yep.
you've seen that on T-shirts, you've seen it on posters. It's iconic at this point. And the reason he did that is the Granada TV crew were in his face when he was trying to perform. So he gives the finger to the cameraman, and that's where it comes from.
Yeah. And that is exactly where it comes from. And I mean, if you've never, there's an album based off of there's a live album based off of this with that famous blue iconic cover. If you've ever seen that, where he's kind of like bent over, and he purposely gets the audience riled up though. And the reason he's doing that is because he's annoyed with this film crew that keeps a camera at his face all the time.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, did they ever make the documentary?
Yeah, it's out there.
I need to go watch that. I didn't know. I've never really thought to look at it. Have you watched it then, Tim?
I know it's out there. I've seen it listed on YouTube. I've never actually seen it.
I don't think I would want to watch all of it, but it would be really curious to see that it's walking around sticking a camera at his face for a little bit.
Yeah, Johnny Cash was a performer. He was the Man in Black. He was he was leading his band, and then you got some British camera crew sticking cameras in someone's face. I mean, it's just, I can see that.
Well, and then on this album, and I don't know how much you know about the history of Johnny Cash, but I've talked about, I grew up in a family that was, we listened to a lot of country music, and I'm familiar with a lot of his history. In this album, it was his first time, album without his lead guitar player. And which also was one of his founders in his band, Luther Perkins. He had died 7 months earlier, not seven. Why do I keep several months earlier? Words are hard. And then he's also playing tribute to him in this album. So he's there's different things. So I think that maybe this was an extra special kind of thing for him, but also it would just really be annoying if you're trying to play a concert and there's a, camera in your face, right in your face.
Well, that has actually happened to me. I played.
Whoa! Didn't know I was you were so famous.
Well, I played a gig in Slough Town Centre in the early 2000s, and it was from a TV documentary called Making Slough Happy. I've never actually seen it, and I've looked for it on YouTube, and I cannot find it anywhere. It aired at some point, and I never saw it, and it's evaporated. You can find references to it, but I've never been able to find it. But the culmination of this Making Slough Happy documentary project thing is they put a big event on in Slough Town Centre where there was several things going on during the day, and there was a concert. And it was a local band called Daft. I was not a member of Daft, but the rest of the band couldn't do the concert, and I was asked to do it. So I practiced with them, and then we played an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
And because it was for a TV documentary, I think there was 2 or 3 cameras on stage filming us. And it's kind of annoying, I will tell you that. And the cameraman kept treading on my chorus pedal, turning it off.
Yeah, that would be annoying. And now you know why Johnny Cash flipped him off.
Yes.
So anyway, this is another one that I've seen on the internets, and I've watched bits and pieces of it, but I have not really thought too much about it. And this is so for those who don't know, this is about Berlin Wall coming down. I'll just preface that. So Roger Waters, the mastermind behind Pink Floyd's, album The Wall, once in an interview after leaving Pink Floyd in 1985, he was reluctant to play the songs from The Wall on stage ever again. He did say, however, there was a certain circumstance under which he would play those songs. And for example, he gave if the Berlin Wall came down.
Yeah.
So of course he had to eat his words because that happened. Thus, it was decided that Waters would perform the album in Berlin's former no man's land 8 months after the fall of the Berlin Wall. He was joined by a huge lineup, if you've never seen it, but there was Sinead O'Connor, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison, and there was an album, I think, released from this concert as well.
Yeah, I believe so. Now, this may be iconic. Roger Waters and performing The Wall, in East Germany, all these classic artists. That was some time after The Wall was torn down. Everybody remembers what happened the night the wall was torn down.
It's true.
Because you've got a million Germans on each side of the wall. They're tearing the wall down. The East Germans are getting their freedom at last. The wall is coming down. Germany is going to be reconnected once again.
Yeah.
And what do you have on a cherry picker over the top of the Berlin Wall? You have David Hasselhoff.
I knew he was going to say it.
David Hasselhoff wearing a piano piano scarf, which I actually have one. He's wearing a black leather jacket with LEDs, or no, I think it wouldn't be LEDs. They were like bulbs, like chasing light bulbs all over that. He's got a huge microphone from the TV company ZDF, like with a huge big like muff on the top of the microphone, and he's singing his song "Looking for Freedom."
I knew it was coming. I knew that was going to be Tim's segue as soon as I brought it up. I think they thought this one was just ironic because he literally said if the Berlin Wall came down, so that he had to play the songs from the wall.
There we are. But everybody remembers Hasselhoff. Hasselhoff being personally responsible for the wall coming down. Without him, it would have never happened.
You guys heard it here first. I was like, as soon as I started, I was like, I'm going to give him at least 30 seconds. I know he's going to bring up that song. I had ulterior motives. All right. So this is one that stands out to me. And I can say without fail, I've probably watched this concert 1,000 times. That's not a joke, guys. This is Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk on Motown 25 yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah, I think wasn't he performing with the Jacksons on that particular performance, and then he breaks off and then does Billie Jean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where the Jacksons are together for a minute, and then he breaks up and does his own thing.
Yeah, and then I said this is the first time we ever see the moonwalk.
And my mom always used to talk about how, so for those who don't know, this isn't the first time the moonwalk. They did point out that bands as the Blues Brothers did the moonwalk, James Brown did the moonwalk, but for some reason they are not synonymous with the moonwalk. Michael Jackson is, right? For certain, the way he just kind of lit up. And I think it's because it's when he's wearing that, remember he's got like the silver socks and the black hat. Mm-hmm. It might have been Billie Jean that he did the moonwalk to.
It was
actually.
Billie Jean, yes, 100%. Motown 25, it's famous.
Once again, I'm like, I don't know why my brain break. I'm like, I've seen this song. I've seen this at least 1,000 times, so I should know it off the top of my head. But I've learned anytime I assume I know something, Tim, I'm wrong. But, he's got his flair. He's got the posing. He's doing the black sequin jacket, stopping the world for movement, as he calls it. And then he drops right into the moonwalk with one of the most iconic bass lines of all time.
So the question I raise at this point, do you think Buzz Aldrin has ever done the moonwalk? I mean, yeah, he's done the real moonwalk, but I wonder whether he's ever done the Michael Jackson moonwalk.
I don't know, but it makes you, I always thought about that whenever I think about walking on the moon. I'm like, I wish they would have brought somebody out there to dance or get like a moonwalking robot. Those have to exist by now.
Maybe. There's rovers on Mars. There was a helicopter on Mars not too long ago.
I like have you ever seen, Tim, like when the Mars rover gets stuck or something and they have to like get it to shake off the dirt and stuff?
Yeah, because the other thing is they send a command to the Mars rover and it takes like 17 minutes for the radio signals to get to Mars. So the pictures you get are 17 minutes old.
Tim, I have said this over and over and over. The thing in my life, there's a theory. Okay, hold on. You just brought up a whole thing. And we probably will have maybe time for one more song, one more little iconic thing after this. But okay. I have a whole story. There is something in my life that trips me out more than anything else to think about. And that is the concept of light years. And the concept of time being in light years is what is literally mesmerizing to me. For those who have no clue what I'm talking about, if you look at a star in the sky and they say that is 7 light years away, right, Tim? Mm-hmm. That means that happened 7 million years ago. Is it million or 7 years ago? Whatever it is, it literally happened in the past. Anything you're seeing that is light years away happened in the past.
Yeah, well, all these stars you see, you're seeing them burning from years and years and years ago.
And no one talks about this. Like, no one, that is so on the TikToks, there's this thing called the Roman Empire. And apparently, some guys say that they think of the Roman Empire multiple times a week. Do you think of the Roman Empire multiple times a week, Tim?
No, I've heard about this concept, and no.
It's weird. Charlie looked at me like, what are you talking about? So now there's videos of people saying, my Roman Empire is, the things that just pop up in your head randomly.
Mm-hmm.
My Roman Empire is the concept of light years. Because I realize I am very pro science. I follow the science. This is more important to me. Like I'm very, that's who I am. I'm not much of a spiritualist. And so I understand time is not linear. We just experience it in a linear manner. You can say that to me, but for me to actually understand it, I feel like none of us truly understand it. And it blows my mind that when I look at something and it's 7 light years away, that means it happened in the past.
That's true. The other thing that breaks my brain is the fact that we're on the Earth in the infinite vacuum of space. And then that hurts my head.
The whole concept of space hurts my head, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah, the fact it never ends. It's just...
Or begins, really.
Yeah, the more you think about it, the more it hurts your head. It really does.
It's just the craziest concept to me. All right, Tim, what's your Roman Empire? What is the thing that lives rent-free in your head?
I don't know. There's many things that I'm thinking about all the time, mostly from like 1982, if I'm being honest.
Well, if you had to give one for the audience, what would you say is your Roman Empire?
I honestly can't think of one. I don't have a one thing like that.
Dang. Well, my Roman Empire is the concept of looking at stars in the past. And it's not just, it's anything. And I'm like, what? How? Like, how is distance time? But then I think about miles per hour, right? And things like that. So we do judge distance somewhat in time, but we also judge it in distance. Yards for my Americans or miles. But distance to me equaling time is very strange.
I mean, do we need to get Brian May on the podcast to explain this stuff?
So then if I were okay, hold on, question. If I were on the star and I looked down at Earth and I saw you and you were 7 light years away, would that mean I was seeing you that many years ago?
Very possibly, but you wouldn't be able to see me because I'd be so minuscule.
But what if something on the Earth, Tim? Like with the... Okay, well, we're obviously not scientists. If someone is a scientist who would like to explain this to me, I probably still won't get it, but you could try. I'm not a smart girl, but I try my hardest. All right, Tim, do you think we have time for one more?
I would say let's do one more. We'll steer it back to the world of music. How's that?
We will end it with one that is iconic. We both know very well, and I think it's probably, if not the most iconic piece of music history, and that is the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yes, that maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, Apple had the rights to it, and it was on like whatever the Apple TV thing was at the time, or iTunes or whatever. And they had the whole performance. I'd never really seen the whole performance before, but I watched it from beginning to end, and it's just like, now it's still iconic, but back then it was such a shift in society. Those 15, 14 minutes, whatever it was, just completely not only changed music, but changed society, culture, everything.
And so to put in perspective, I'll give you guys a little bit of background history on this. So in February of 1964 was about their first, performance in front of an American artist. They said when they landed on February 7th, there was 5,000 people waiting for their plane to land.
Wow.
Just crowds of people. And I think now, and I'm like, the security would never. Nowadays, they would never, Tim. You wouldn't know they were landing. Like, how do all these people know they were landing?
Well, because you think at the time air travel was in its infancy, there would only be so many flights that were coming from England. So it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to work out what flight the Beatles were going to be on.
Fair enough. All right. During the February 18th rehearsal for the first performance, George Harrison was confined to a hotel because he had strep throat, if anybody was wondering. And the Beatles road manager, Neil, I don't know how to say his last name, actually stood in for him during the rehearsal. So George never got to rehearse for the actual show.
Okay.
Anyway, so basically, CBS had a huge anticipation, and it was surpassed with 50,000 ticket requests for the 728 seats they had in Studio 50.
Yeah, so it happened at the Ed Sullivan Theatre, which is
Yes.
by 39th Street off Broadway. I've been in the Ed Sullivan Theatre because I saw the David Letterman show being taped there. The way that they had it set up for Letterman, I think it was 300 seats or 290 seats. It was actually a relatively small audience. But when Ed Sullivan had it, the audience was much bigger.
Yep.
But just to be in that theatre, you know, I love David Letterman, and seeing his show being taped was fantastic. But you walk into that theatre, and the history hits you because of things like that.
Exactly. And so they said that this was the largest largest amount of ticket requests since Elvis in 1957, and he had 7,000. They had 50,000. Elvis had 7,000. Just to put in perspective, among those in attendance were Richard Nixon's daughters. And then they said there was some guy, I don't know who this is, but he's an Olympic gold medal ski skater, Terry McDark. There was a part-time barber. And he posed for photographs with the band pretending to cut Paul McCartney's hair. And then the rest were just regular people. That's the only celebrities that were there, but it was 50,000. And if you've ever seen it, there's people literally, I always wonder about those people, you know, they said Beatles mania. So if you've ever seen it, it's like if it was 50,000 people and we had two of Richard Nixon's daughter, some Olympic barber, the rest were all, I would say at least 47,000 were women.
Well, there was 50,000 ticket requests. The Ed Sullivan Theatre held
728, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was smaller. But yeah, I sometimes wonder about the hysteria of it. Because, I mean, there's people screaming and crying, and I don't know. Have people ever got excited about a band like that since? I don't know.
Right now, it's the people that are obsessed with Taylor Swift. Her fan base is very extreme.
Yeah, but I don't see the same level of hysteria.
I would agree with
hysteria that you see with the Beatles when you see footage back from the 60s.
And maybe it was, I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of really good marketing on their part, too. You know, but I love when people talk about boy bands and they always want to bring up like people like the Backstreet Boys. I'm like, well, if you really want to go back there, you could say the Jackson 5 was a boy band. You could say the Beatles were a boy band if you really wanted to. It's debatable, but it's the truth. And they played into that marketing just in a different way.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, one thing that you hear about this Beatles performance, there's so many musicians, so many guitar players that say, you know, I decided to start a band when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, or I decided to pick up a guitar when I saw Beatles on Ed Sullivan. It created such a shift in the whole of the entertainment industry, those 18 minutes or whatever they performed.
And I find the irony, Tim, is no offense to any members of the Beatles. I love the Beatles, but I don't think any one of them was that attractive. They looked like average British men to me. Like, you know what I mean? The people swooning over them. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it was a sign of the times. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, their images are so iconic in my brain. It's hard for me to sort of be objective about that.
I will say, if I had to pick one, I would have went with Paul McCartney as being the prettiest.
Yeah, he was probably the most attractive Beatle. I mean, my favorite Beatle is probably Ringo because I like Ringo.
I do too. I don't know as much about George Harrison because sadly he was taken from us too soon. And obviously, John Lennon, me and Tim have talked ad nauseum about the fact that people think he was a nice guy when he really wasn't.
Yes.
He might walk up and punch you in the face, but then go home and do a video about peace and love.
Yeah, peace and no, you're thinking of Ringo. Peace and love, peace and
I'm sorry.
love.
No, whatever it was, him and Yoko would go home and talk about peace. I don't know, unity,
bed peace and hair peace and all that stuff.
They were still promoting peace, Tim.
Yeah, the war is over. It was funny. It was funny. I've been listening to this McCartney podcast. It's like McCartney and Lyrics podcast. Yeah. And he's talking about like he's had various feuds with John Lennon or had various feuds with John Lennon over the years after the Beatles split. You know, I think they reconciled before the end. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how he released the song, you know, the war is over and the war is over if you want it. And then Paul McCartney's being interviewed about this. And he said, I saw all this. And he said, no, it's not, you idiot. That's what he said.
can see myself just like, because I know I don't want to speak ill of John Lennon, but when you hear some of this hippie kind of like stuff like that, you know how ridiculous in actuality it sounds. It's exactly what Paul McCartney was thinking in that moment.
Yeah.
He's like,
I don't know.
really?
I actually laughed out loud when he said that.
I would do. That's hilarious. Amazing. I think that's where we should leave it, Tim. Do you have any advice for the people?
And just be super kind to everybody you meet.
Watch out for oil slicks and banana peels.
There we are. That's great advice.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.